Barney, don't speak mean to him. Reason with him.
Okay. Now, Bam Bam, you mustn't hit anything with your... Ouch! Hey, let go of my finger!
Then what about the all the natural world around you?
I don't see how the natural world is evidence for anything other than the natural world.
Other than the natural, well, that's just begging the question.
No.
That's
I'm
like
saying,
that.
We have a world, right?
Yeah, but that's like saying a potato is evidence for a potato. That doesn't speak of causality.
A potato would be evidence for a potato. If I said I have a potato in my pocket and then I pulled out a potato out of my pocket, that would be evidence that I had a potato.
Yeah,
right?
that doesn't speak of causality though. When you say, well, hold on, relax a second. When you say I don't have evidence for God, we're not speaking of, here's God on the table. We're speaking of what is the evidence, the physical evidence, the scripture.
So
Hold on, relax. Hold on, relax. Hold on. Yeah, let's let each other finish our statements. So, if according to the Christian scriptures, it says, the invisible attributes of God are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, so that people are without excuse. So, hold on, real quick. No, hold on. There's rules to this, sir. There's rules to the server. We got to let each other finish. I'm almost done, but there's not going to be obstructionism in here. There's going to be or evasiveness. We're going to be direct and to the point. And I'm almost finished. Literally 30 seconds. So when we speak in the Christian worldview, the framework of what is the evidence for the Christian God, that is creation itself. That is the evidence for God. And if you say it's not evidence for God, then I'm asking you what it's evidence for. And I'm not saying, tell me the potato is evidence for the potato. I'm saying, what's the causal evidence for the potato?
Okay. So how about, I don't know. How about, so let's say me and you.
Right, exactly. Hold on. When you say I don't know.
Hey, no. You let me finish. I let you finish. You're going to let me.
Yeah, but you've already given me hold on.
You're going to have a two-way conversation or I'm going to hang up.
Hold on. You have already given me an unintelligible answer when you say I don't know. You've already said I don't know what the evidence of the potato is for. Okay, so now go on and give me a bunch of side explanations.
I let you finish, so you should do the same for me, right? That's respect, right?
Sure.
Do you agree that we're going to have a respectful conversation?
Sure, but I'm letting you know from the outset, you've already given me unintelligibility. You have said that you don't know what the potato is evidence for. So you don't know it's not evidence for God. You've made some very strong claims against the Christian God on the outside of this chat here. And you can't back them up now.
I haven't made any claim. Now let me ask you this. Let's say that me and you walk. Let's different use a potato. Let's change it from a potato, right? Let's say me and you walk outside of the bar, right? I don't know if you drink. I don't know if you're like conservative Baptist. I was raised in a religion that didn't drink, but that's not matter, right?
Sure.
Let's say me and you walk outside a bar.
Sure.
And we see a guy laying there dead, his throat's been cut, he's obviously been murdered, right? And you turn to me and you say, I think the butler did it. And I say, I don't know if the butler did it. How do you know the butler did it? And you said, well, there's a guy there murdered. Somebody had to murder him. I don't know how just saying that the world exists means that there was a God, right? I'm perfectly okay with the idea that I don't know how everything began. And if you do know, I would like to have evidence for how you do know.
Well, when you say, you're perfectly fine that not knowing how the world began, that's just not evidence against the Christian God or a defeater.
It's not evidence against it,
right.
No, but I'm not making the claim that the Christian God doesn't exist. I'm making the claim that me, myself, am unconvinced that the Christian God exists.
Well, I would disagree. If I was right, like that, again, I think you have plenty of evidence. It's just that, if a person's going to receive the evidence that they've been given. I don't think you're.
What evidence?
Well, look, when you say, well, there's no good. Hold on. Let's let each other finish. When you say that there's no good reason to believe in God, you're presupposing that the necessary preconditions for reason exist in virtue of the Christian God not existing. In other words, hold on, almost done. In other words, you believe your rationality is erupting out of irrationality. And what's your basis for that? You don't have one. Can you provide?
Are you a presuppositional?
I am a Christian.
I want you to answer that question. Are you a presuppositional?
Yeah, I'm a Christian that employs apologetic. Yeah, a Christian presuppositional apologetics, which is biblically based.
I do not engage with presuppositionalists.
Well, because you're already defeated. You've already told me that you can't even give an answer for the intelligibility of a potato.
There's no I don't have. Here's the thing. I don't have to explain how things exist in order to admit that they exist, right? I don't have to know how this Pepsi I'm drinking was made in order for me to realize that this Pepsi was made, right? I don't have to. Right. There are things. Hold on. There are things about the universe that I can't explain. But just because I don't have an explanation does not make your explanation correct. That's an argument from ignorance.
No. You're giving the argument. Hold on, relax. Let me respond to you. You're giving the argument from ignorance.
No, I'm not. How am I giving the argument from ignorance?
Because you're ultimately admitting to ultimate unintelligibility to the ultimacy of reality. But you can say, well, I can give you subsurface level data information about certain facts. Yeah, because you live in God's world and he's made you to know certain things and you operate in God's world. Hold on. Please relax. So he's made you to operate in his world to be able to think.
Objection, Your Honor, assumes facts not in.
Well, again, you're the one assuming that you're able to think rational from a irrational absolute. You can't provide. Hold on. Look, you can't provide any explanation or an account for how your rationality has erupted out of irrationality. That's the absolute that you're holding to.
I can't provide evidence for a God. You're right.
Right. So you hold it on base. So right. The way that you reason using the laws of logic and all these things are based on faith from an absolute you cannot provide, which means it's a baseless, foundationalist system. Every assertion you make is baseless. Every assertion you're going to make is baseless.
Okay. That wouldn't make you right, though. Even if every point I made is baseless, that doesn't make you right.
Well, look, I'm not the one who's look, I'm not God who's it's not me that you're ultimately arguing against. When it comes to the revelation of who God is and his self-disclosure, it's God that you're arguing against.
Well, let's go back to the murder example, right? Me and you come across this guy that's been murdered in the street, right?
Sure.
And you propose that it's the butler. And I say, I'm not sure. What's your evidence for the butler? And you say, well, it's not him, and it's not him, and it's not her, and this person's wrong about this. That wouldn't make you right that the butler did it. You would actually have to show that the butler did it. Even if I'm wrong, even if I admit that you're wrong, that I don't have a basis for my rationality, even if I admit that wouldn't make you right. You still have to provide an evidence for your right.
Yeah, that's not my argument. I agree with you. That's not my argument because you're wrong. I'm right. That would be that's not the fallacy I'm making. I'm not making any fallacy. I'm saying that you're arguing against the Christian God who's given self-disclosure.
I'm not arguing against the Christian God.
Absolutely.
I'm saying I'm not convinced that he exists. Do you have evidence that he exists? You're coming to me making an argument, telling me that this thing exists. I'm asking you, what is your evidence for this thing to exist?
Okay, hold up your hand and look at it.
Okay,
you looking at it? That's evidence for God.
No, it's not.
How is it not evidence for God? And if it's not evidence for God, what's it evidence for?
It's evidence that I have a hand.
Now, again, that we're not talking about begging the question and saying the potato is evidence. We're talking about causal relations and what caused. Why is the hand ultimately there? What gives the hand its ultimate meaning and reality? Where did it?
Prove
Where does it
that.
have its ultimate
Okay.
derivation? Where does it ultimately come from?
Let me see if I can understand. So your point is that my hand is so complex or so thin that it had to have a creator.
No, I'm saying that your hand is not unconditionally non-dependent and absolute in and of itself, but it has its derivation ultimately in an origin point. What?
I could cut it off. Some people are born without hands, right?
Right? We're not talking about cutting off hands and things like that, right? It's
There's
still,
people who
even
are
if you
born
cut
without
off your
hands,
hand, it
right?
still would not be unconditionally non-dependent and absolute. It would still have its
Okay, what about
derivation.
people who are born without
And
hands? God made my hand, right?
you're,
He
wait,
made
hold on, you're
people-
being evasive and obstructive. This is the constant plan B that atheists do when they're confronted with this problem.
No, you said God
In their
created my
worldview, they
hands.
cannot.
That means God
Hold
created
on,
my
relax.
hands
Now we're
without
talking over each
hands.
other.
So that means that God didn't have to create hands, right? Because there
We're
are
not
people
gonna.
who are
Hey,
born without
hey, we
hands.
can't hear each other, man. If we're going to talk over each other, so we got to give each other ample time. And I'm not a long speaker. I'm not very long-winded. So 60 seconds or so at the most, I'll be talking. If you cut off your hand, your hand would still be not unconditionally non-dependent, absolute in and of itself, but it would have its derivation in that which is unconditionally non-dependent and absolute. Ultimately, its origin point. Now, right.
Okay.
So when you say
I-
it's not evidence for God, well, what's it evidence for? What's the origin point? What is it? What is it evidence for? And if you say I don't know, right, and you just admitted to it, then you can't say it's not evidence. You cannot say it's not evidence for God.
Okay. I don't know what the origin point is. If you would like to present an origin point, I would like to see your
Yeah,
evidence.
in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the very first sentence of the Bible. And the very first sentence of, hold on, relax. In the very first sentence of the chapter of John, it says, and all things were made through him and for him, and without him nothing was made that was made. So no, that's God self-disclosing where the origin point. Hold on, relax, Prince. Okay. Hey, look. It sounds like you might have had some experience in the, and oftentimes what people are rejecting, I don't believe is Christianity, but something that's been propped up in their lives by which people stood under the banner of self-righteousness to earn their own righteousness, and a bunch of commandments of do's and don'ts that ultimately would self-justify a person if they just live the godly, righteous life. The Bible says that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law, and it has nothing to do. And I would like to get into the gospel eventually with you, but you ultimately are going, no matter what you give me, no matter what I provoke, talk about your hand or a coffee cup that's sitting there in front of you, you're going to give me short causal explanations, but explanatory explanations, but they're ultimately going to end, and I don't know where it came from. I ultimately don't know where it came from, and everything is going to end in unintelligibility when you reject the God of the Bible. If you say no, he hasn't self-disclosed that he's created all things, then who has and what has? And if that's, you say that's not the truth, demonstrate that.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that's not the truth.
Sure.
I mean, again, I go back to the murder example. Because if you come to me and we find this murder person, and I say that the butler did it, or you say that the butler did it, and I said, well, I'm not convinced, what's your evidence that the butler did it? That doesn't mean that I believe that the butler didn't do it, right? It's still possible that the butler did it. It just means that I'm not convinced by the evidence that I'm not convinced by the evidence that the butler did it yet. Now, if you had evidence that the butler did it, maybe we go to the butler's house, find a knife, fingerprints on it, and then maybe we find a note.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill you someday. I'm just giving you an example. Now we have evidence saying that this book says that God created the earth, therefore it's true. There's plenty of other creation myths out there. What separates yours from the other?
We're not talking about, like, you could be wrong. We could be wrong about, well, there's silver under Disneyland. There's a pocket of silver under Disneyland. That we're not talking about. God's not like any other thing. You can't, when it comes to God. Hold on. You got to hold on. You got to make the. Hey, Prince. I just let you just carry out that whole thing and give your explanation. You got to let me respond. God's not like any other thing. You got to make the creature creator distinction. And so you can be wrong about silver under Disneyland. God's not something that you could be wrong about. because
Okay.
right, like I said, when you say that there's no good reasons for God, well, reason is the reason to believe in God, because without God, you have no reason to believe in reason. Where is the source and absolute for
Yeah,
your
that's
rationality to be able to?
what's
And
your
that's why
evidence
you
for
ultimately say, well, when I ask you about, anything, you ultimately, the potato, what it's evidence for, you'll say, well, I don't know, ultimately. But you're committed. You're committed to saying it's not evidence for God. Well, what's your evidence that it's not evidence for God? What's your evidence for that?
I didn't say that it's not evidence for God. What I said is that we have this thing, right? We have this world, right? You're proposing that the reason that this world that we is here because a God created. I'm asking you, what is your evidence for that proposal, that claim that you're making? And you're just going back to,
No, it's not my claim. It's the claim of the God of the universe, who has self-disclosed himself.
Okay, I would like you to answer.
Yeah, I did. It's not my claim. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. All things were made through him, and for him, without him, nothing was made that was made. The invisible attributes of God are. Hold on, relax, Prince. Prince. We can't argue over each other. Come on. You asked me a question, and then you ask. If you really want an answer, it doesn't seem like you would talk over me. Now, I understand that you might not like the Bible and scriptures and stuff, but if you're going to engage a Christian, you're going to hear some scriptures. You're going to hear the Bible, because that's, right? That's my arguing point and foundation. So I'm giving you.
It's not a matter of whether I like it or not. It's a matter of whether or not this is true.
Exactly. But you ultimately, just like the potato, when I you cannot tell me whether it's true or not. And you just already admitted to it several times. You said, well, I'm not saying it's not evidence for God. Well,
yeah. Okay. Let's go there. You want to use something? Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I will answer it, because I don't know where you stand on this. And different Christian, was he born during the reign of Herod the Great, or was he born after the reign of Herod the Great?
Yeah. See the problem. What you're doing, and I expected this, is you're trying to be evasive.
No, I think it's a legitimate question.
No, you're trying to go to evidentialism. Hold on, Prince. We can't talk over each other. You're trying to go to evidentialism away from the idea of presuppositionalism, which shows you that you can't even have evidence. That evidence doesn't mean anything in your worldview, because no matter what evidence I supply to you, you're just going to be, with your bias, just going to say, well, and then you're going to move on to the next critique and the next criticism, always judging things from your own autonomy. Hold on, from your own circular reasoning. But when you're always pressed on these things and you say, well, could you be wrong about it? You'll say, well, yeah, I could be wrong. Yeah, I could ultimately be wrong. And I ultimately don't know where,
I could be wrong. So what? But just because I could be wrong doesn't mean that I am.
Yeah, well, sure. Like, you're not wrong about a lot of things, because you live in God's world and you operate in God's world. But when it comes to the ultimate, when it comes to the ultimacy, intelligibility of any given fact, it will ultimately be unintelligible in your worldview, not being able to provide a foundation. If you can't provide a foundation, no matter what you say, it's going to be a baseless assertion. It's not going to have any.
But even if, and again, like I said, even if it is baseless, that wouldn't make you right? Like, if I said, you may have seen me post something that said that I can replace any argument Christians make for God with the word invisible pink unicorn and make the same argument. I could very well just say, you can't have reason unless you believe in the invisible pink unicorn. And anything you say that doesn't involve the invisible pink unicorn is unintelligible. And therefore, you can't know, so therefore the invisible pink unicorn is real. Like, that's not logic. Now, before you go on, I would like you to answer the question, because when you said that this world we have is created by God because of what it says in Genesis, what it says in John, I want you to tell me what separates the Bible, the creation stories in the Bible, from other creation stories throughout history, because other societies have had creation stories about how their gods created the earth. There's Native American myths about how the wolf gods. I want to know what separates the Bible from these other creation myths? What's the difference? Because I don't understand that.
Well, there's a lot of different little, all kinds of different things that, so obviously, I mean, the fall of man, different things. I mean, there might be similarities, but I think even you would have to understand just because there's similarities doesn't make something wrong either.
No.
That's another. But again, when we go back to let me just go back to the pink unicorn thing. Pink unicorns do not give explanatory power to the universe. Hold on, a pink unicorn hasn't hold on, Prince. A pink unicorn hasn't Prince. Hold on, Prince. A pink unicorn hasn't self-disclosed himself as being the creator of the universe.
It says the pink unicorn created the world, and nobody comes. Pink unicorn, and 5,000 people saw the pink unicorn. A book on my shelf says that. It's a book. You should just believe it because it's in a book.
That's you're making a huge category error. You're making a huge category error between which I'm sure you really don't have a book like that, but you're speaking like a fictional book. But you're acting.
Okay.
Why do atheists get anti-book all of a sudden when they go to scientific books to find out truth all the time? That they lean on and say, well, these people are smarter than me. I'm just going to believe that what they say about the ultimacy of reality is true. And they've made the equations. I'm good. I'll rest on their understanding, right?
Well, do you know what the difference in my mind, what the difference is? Science books.
Well, what it is that you're committed to an atheist worldview.
You're cutting me.
Well, yeah, you're not letting me finish. You're not letting me finish. So you're committed to an atheist worldview. That's why you're doing it. You're hostile towards God.
My finger!
Thanks for watching. I hope your day is going good. P.S. Atheism is completely bankrupt and incoherent. It should be abandoned at all costs.